Hey, folks. All right. Hey, I'm going to get my phone going here. I've got a timer set. I've got a short session today to play with you guys, but I wanted to take a few moments here to look at how the Eberron Spelljammer campaign playtest went on Wednesday, because this is my weekly game, and we're going to keep at that. So give me a second here to check my signal, make sure I'm coming through clean. I'll go through my intro real quick, and then we'll get to work here for like just a little bit. So let's see. Mic check, mic check. 1, 2, 3. Mic. Yeah, sounds like I'm pretty good. Okay, cool. I'm just going to go ahead and post here on the social medias real fast that we're up and running, and then we'll get started here. So just for reference, my name is Phil Kearney. Hey, I create role-playing games, I illustrate them, and I publish them online, and I have been focusing my attention on Spelljammer, and I've been using, what's the word I'm looking for? The word I want to use is eberron. Yes, I've been focusing on eberron as my homebrew campaign for the past, since like 2006. When did that? Pretty much since that campaign saying it come out in 3rd edition, it's been where I've planted my flag as like my default setting if I'm not doing a homebrew world. So with the release here of Spelljammer coming out next week, our team decided to build a campaign themed around both Eberron as our home campaign and Spelljammer as the extension that we've been creating here. So let's see. I've just posted on the Spelljammer Preservation, our subreddit of Spelljammer. Great channel, great questions, great conversations there. It's worth checking out. On the X Twitter platform, I'm at Phil Kearney. If you're there, you can follow to get notifications when I'm live. Here on YouTube, at Phil Kearney, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notifications of when we are live in the future. And here's the full playlist of all the content that we've been producing for this. We're going to keep playtesting this, and if it turns out to be a lot of fun, I'll clean up and post these rules for other people to playtest as well. It's a very light and loose system. So we had 5 people show up on Wednesday for the first session, and it's a 1-hour lunchtime campaign that I play with my coworkers. And 5 people at the board with a DM and 1 hour to play each week. It is a unique experience and challenge to run a game that way. We had just recently finished a level 1 to 20 campaign in Eberron using 5e mechanics. That took 5 years for 3 people to complete. And during that time, we gained more interest in more people that wanted to play along. So we now have 6 players in sort of a West March, and 5 of them showed up. So if you've been checking out the channel, and you can check out the previous 14 episodes, we had to build a new game system from scratch to accommodate the fast, loose style of game and narrative play that we need to be able to have 6 or 7 people at the table to all be working together. And it actually went really well. So what we had done is, looking here, we ground down action economy for the characters to be, you basically have each player has one action that they can take during their turn. We had a rotation between our players. I just randomly rolled who in the group would go when. So, and when it was their turn, I just tick off the square. What are you doing? And they would have the opportunity to do one thing. And if that one thing required a die roll, then they would use the attribute facet system that we had created of either using might, power, skill, or grit to influence the die roll that they made. I needed to make it even faster and easier to use and to simplify the mechanics so I could make sure we could process quicker to be able to have one action per person. So it'd be, person A, what do you want to do? If there's a die roll that would be involved with it, roll the die, and and it was either an open die roll where they didn't know what the result, what the difficulty of the task was. They would make a die roll, and if it felt like that was a good task, then they would succeed with it. Or if it was obviously a shit roll, then they would get some sort of a complication that would then hit the team. And a complication would either increase the difficulty of the actual roll that they needed, or it would damage them. And they have 10 hit points each, and the amount of damage that they would take would be the difficulty that they rolled versus the difficulty that they were attempting. And it scales from 1 to 10. So if the difficulty was a 4 and they only got a result of 2, then they would take 2 points of damage. And I would, since we had 5 people at the table, when there was going to be damage dealt, the person that rolled the die, they would also then roll a 6-sided die. And that was the number of people in the party that would be affected by whatever the complication was. So with 5 people at the board, I was having them rolling a 6-sided die. If they rolled a 5, 6, or 7, if they rolled a 5 or a 6, it would affect everybody on the team. If it was a 1, we would start like if Sop was the person that rolled and failed and had a complication, created a second. I'm still figuring out the language for this, but a complication difficulty 2, and the target was difficulty 4, then they're going to deal 2 points of damage to however many people they rolled. And in this instance, they rolled a 4. So everyone on the team got damaged except for Sop, who was the one that actually caused the complication, which is so much fun because now they're getting paranoid about hurting each other and getting each other killed. The consequences are only rare because you start here with the person next to you. So like Sop would go, and then whatever complications would happen, the DM would process what those were, or just tell you the result of what happened if they were successful with their die roll. Then Jazzy would roll. And if Jazzy hit the number needed, then great. I'll tell you the result that you got. Otherwise, you create another complication. So when Sop failed that die roll and rolled a 4, Jazzy, Millis, Edwin, and Alex took 2 points of damage each, but Sop wasn't affected at all. So now Sop feels bad about fucking up the team. They only have 10 hit points. So if they kept doing things like that, their character, they die at 0. There's no savings. There's no resurrections. It's just 0, you die, roll a new character. And it takes like 2 minutes to make a character. So it's super easy. It's just, you just recycle. It's a platoon style campaign where there's lots of NPCs that are allied to the characters that are in the environment that can be tapped to bring in with little delay. So that by the time it's your turn again, you've got a new character on the board, and the team accepts where that character came from because they were pulled from the roster of NPCs to repopulate the active team. So getting the characters killed is fine. Let's see. They have the way that works is, you have that one action. There's the you have your skills, and you have your proficiency. You have your ability scores. One is going to be a +3, a +2, +1, 0, -1, -2. Arrange those modifiers to your strength, dex, con, and wisdom, and charisma in any order that you want. Like we've discussed in previous episodes, where is the, let me get to the bits. Where are the bits? I need the bits. Give me, I need to organize this better. I need to make a PDF out of it, and I probably end up will. Characters, there we go. So you get they're currently 0 rank, and the number of successful missions that the team survives as a team, regardless of how many people they have to recycle, if they don't TPK and bail on the mission, they get a point. So they're currently ranked 0 with a +1 proficiency modifier, and if anyone can survive this current mission, they'll gain 1 point of experience, or a point of renown that gets them to first rank. And then they'll need to accumulate a total of 4 missions to get to second rank. So another 3 missions, they'll be second rank. And then another 5 missions, they'll be third rank. Another 7 missions, they'll be fourth rank. And then another 9 missions, they'll be fifth rank. So as long as their team doesn't TPK for 25 sessions, they'll have a 5th ranked team running around with proficiency bonus of +6, and they'll have an effort die that they can apply on circumstances, like if they roll a stat, normally it's just going to be a d20 plus whatever their modifier is. You have power, skill, and grit, and those are your 3 facets of adventure. And so the characters have a body, and that's supposed to be spirit. Body and spirit. There's a body stat and a spirit stat for each asset, for each facet of personality. So for power, their body stat is strength, and their spirit stat is charisma. For skill, their body stat is dexterity, and their spirit stat is intelligence. For grit, their body stat is constitution, and their spirit stat is wisdom. You are proficient with 1 facet. It's like you could be proficient in power, you could be proficient in skill, you could be proficient in grit. Otherwise, it's just your ability stat plus a d20. So if you've got a stat line of +3, +2, +1, 0, -1, -2, you could do something like you could have like a warrior type might have like a +3 in their strength. Maybe they'll have maybe they're a smart soldier, so they'll have a +2 in their intelligence. They're tough, so they'll have a +1 in their constitution. Maybe they're not that bold, so they've got a 0 in their wisdom. They're not very dexterous, so they've got a -1 there, and then they've got a -2 here. They decide to put their proficiency in 1 facet of personality, so let's put it in their power. So whenever they're making a power saving throw, they can choose either their body or their spirit, and then they can't use power again until they've used skill and grit. So you're going to want to use your best bonus in whichever you like. You want to have a good bonus in one of those facets. So like here, their strength would be a +4. So under normal circumstances, if they're using power and you decide narratively which one you use, is a die 20 plus whichever aspect you want. Use the better of the 2 stats that are in that aspect. So this circumstance, it'd be a +2, it'd be a +4, a -1, a -1, and a +2, and it'd be a +1 and a 0. If they're going to take damage or they've created a complication, as a DM, I'm then going to force them to make either a body or a spirit save to try to avoid taking that damage. So, like in this instance above, they were investigating this red moss that had ended up killing some of the miners. They apparently breathed in these spores. They multiplied, and then grew out of their lung system shut down, and they suffocated. So they wanted to explore this stuff. While they were exploring that, Sopa had screwed up the difficulty check of deciphering what this stuff was by 2. So they created a spore cloud. When they opened up this guy's mouth to check it out, it released a cloud of spores into the air that they rolled. 4 out of 5 of them got hit by these spores. That spores are poisonous, and it's a body save to resist it. Since it was a difficulty of 2, a difficulty of 1 is a 4, difficulty of 2 is a 7, and a difficulty of 10 is a 31. So it's 4, 7, 10, 13, 16, 19, 22, 25, 28, 31. Bound accuracy and a scale of 1 to 10 using 5e ability checks. Your proficiency modifier is 1 stat. If you use your power, you can't use it again until you've used both your skill and grit. So in this instance, when they were exploring that spore stuff, they were specifically using grit. They got to use their better save. In this instance, it'd be a +1 to their die roll, so they rolled a d20 +1. It was a difficulty 4 check, so 4, that'd be a difficulty of 13. They rolled a 7, so that meant a difficulty of 2, and they missed it by 2, by a scale of 2. So that meant everybody took a difficulty 2 challenge to save. Some people had so they used their grit. Grit is no longer available. So in this instance, we're looking at, I need you to make a body save against these spores. The difficulty is 2. So since grit is currently not available, they could then use either their skill or their power to make a body save. So the body save, they would either use strength or dexterity. And since they had power available, let's make our save with power. So now power is gone and grit is gone, and regardless, and everyone takes a turn. So that was Sop. Now Jazz has to roll. Now Millie has to roll. Now Edwin has to roll. And then Alec has to roll before it's Sop's turn again. So if any of these people fuck up along the way and force Sop to make a saving throw, either a physical, either a body or spirit save, the only stat that's currently available to them is skill, which means they'd have either a -1 if it's a body save, or a +2 to the die roll if it's a spirit save, and they're not proficient in skills. So they've basically got a d20 -1, or they've got a d20 +2 against whatever the difficulty is that they have to save. And if they screw up that save, they're going to take damage or create an additional complication. Once they've used all 3 of their facets, whether it's because they're actively using it or I'm forcing them to make saving throws, once they've used all 3 of those, they all reset and they can use whichever ones they want. So while they're using things, they're basically going through here, and we're one of our players is going to make an Excel spreadsheet out of this. But you used power, okay, power's out. You use grit, okay, grit is out. The only thing you have left is skill. So you're going to use skill. Now you reset your board, and they're all available. Effort, the D4, which will eventually become a D12. You can use effort once per rotation. So if they were like we saw that grit got eliminated and power got eliminated, and now I'm forcing them to make a body save, and that's a -1. If they held on to their proficiency, their effort die, they'd then be able to add an extra D4 to whatever the result of their body roll is. And they can decide after the roll, oh, that's a shit roll. I'm going to use my power die. I'm going to use my effort die to try to increase that to see. And they'll know, like, there's no way I'm going to succeed at this. I'm not even going to bother putting effort into it. I'm just screwed anyway. Or, boy, this is really going to suck if I have to eat this difficulty 1 that I rolled. That's 4 points below what I needed. I'm going to have to use my effort or I'm going to get killed. So then they roll the effort die and hope that they roll high enough to save them. Obviously, as they get to higher levels, a D12 is a huge swing on their success or not. And then some characters can use effort more often than once per rotation, depending on the character. For instance, dwarves, there's dwarves, gnomes, and warforged. Dwarves can always use effort whenever they're making observations about the environment. So when they're doing this, like if it was a dwarf that was investigating that spore stuff, it's like this spore is from the environment. I'm going to say I can fake it that spore stuff, I could use effort for free. So they'd be able to add a die roll, and they chose to use grit, right? So they used grit in that circumstance. So they had a +1 to their die roll, and now they get free effort, so they get to add a D4 on top of it. So it could have been, if that was a dwarf that was making that check, instead of releasing that spore of clouds, they may have seen it's like, oh, whoa, that's dangerous. That stuff's going to spread. They would have learned that as an option. Like that's a threat they have to look out for because they succeeded the die roll. Because they failed the die roll, they found out in the worst way possible. So as I'm DMing the game, the way that the language is working is you always get an answer of yes or no. You always get information about what you wanted. Like if you're investigating like the spores, I want to find out more about this. Or there was bugs that they found that were dead among the spores that had spore growing out of their chitin. So they wanted to explore that. So if it was the different type of characters, you have environment. Gnomes can get free effort when observing creatures. So we had a gnome in the party, and they investigated. They were specifically investigating creatures because they knew they got effort with that. So they're like, I want to investigate that critter and use my effort. That's free, right? It's like, yes. And they still had their die in backup. So this character knows as long as I'm always observing and making observations and exploring ideas about creatures or interacting with creatures, I'm going to gain advantages in my die. I'm going to have a better die result than not. So they can hold on to that effort die to make saving throws, or if they're stuck in a circumstance where they're going to need it. So they could use that die as like a backup, but they could specialize in their class as a gnome to be able to do things with objects. But this gnome was a diplomat. So a diplomat, if we go down, we look at the diplomacy class, a diplomat can gain, they like Shadow Dark, you're not guaranteed what your features are. You roll for them every time you gain a rank. And at 0 rank, they started with 1. So this character could have gained add your proficiency bonus to observe creatures, whether it's something you're like if they use grit or skill to observe a creature, they would always be able to use their proficiency bonus, even though they put their proficiency bonus in their power facet. You see? So they have the ability to cheat in extra proficiencies or extra effort into their character sheet beyond what its baseline mechanics are. The base of the mechanics are incredibly simple. The classes and races adds different advantages manipulating the mechanics of that ability check system. So that's the quick. I mean, that's honestly that's the gist of it. It's pretty fast and simple. But as a DM, what I get to do as a DM is when they want to do something or they have a question about it. If it's an observation, I'm going to tell them something useful about it. If they succeed the die roll, I'm going to tell them something that's useful, and I'm not going to hurt them over it. If they fail the die roll, they're going to fuck around and find out. Basically, is how that rolls out. Like with those bugs, for instance, if they had failed their observation check, then I would have been able to create an instant complication based on whatever it was. And this is where I get to improvise, because I can have a list of potential complications that the team can face in a room, engaging with a creature, or in the adventure as a whole. And I can refer to those lists of complications, like what complication feels right here, or I could just improvise one on the fly. So they passed the check, so they knew that the bugs were killed by that moss also. But they also, when they were messing with it, there was a little spark of light that came out of it, and the moss sucked the light into its foliage, and it disappeared. They're like, that was really weird. So we know that these bugs somehow have light, and this moss eats it, and they're all capable of seeing in the dark. So none of them have lit a torch yet, but they have to use effort to make observations while they're in the dark. Which is why the gnome was specifically observing the creature, because they knew that they would have to spend effort to make an observation about the room or about an object that, like, the moss could be considered an object. The moss is in the environment, and the moss was on a creature. So they could decide what aspect of that scenario are they observing to try to bend into using free effort. So they get to improvise how they're narrating and framing their character in the adventure. So what do you want to do? I want to observe this creature, and this is what I'm looking for. Okay, make your check. You fucked up. Okay, well, you find out that, yeah, this bug was killed by it, but it unleashes a burst of light. Give me a saving throw against, I don't know, maybe they have a complication of 3 on their hands now. Give me a saving throw that's going to be a DC of 10. Roll a die. If you get to use your effort, good luck, or not. Otherwise, take the naked die roll with your modifier, good luck. But if that complication, I would have maybe blinded them for a minute. So now they're going to be at disadvantage on anything involving observation until they can clear that blindness from their eyes. But they didn't, so they aren't blinded. But that's something I could have just spontaneously sprung on them. So some of the stuff that they decided to do as a result of this, they kicked up that massive cloud of spore into the room, and now the room is full of spores, and they have to leave the room. There's another room they can go forward to, or they could leave altogether and go back to start and wait it out, which would then increase it would increase the difficulty of the room overall because they're stalling. So they're like, well, we don't want to stall on this. It's a problem we have to fix, figuring out what killed our miners so everyone else can go back to work and keep mining this place without fear of being killed. So one of our characters decided, I'm just gonna barrel ahead and just bum rush through the spore to try to get to the next room. Okay, go ahead and make that check. But since you're trying to barrel through these spores, give me a body saving throw to prevent being affected by the spores. They failed their roll, so now I hit them with spores and made them fall. Basically, they tripped over their own shoes, fell face first into the moss, and then took 2 points of damage for inhaling a bunch of poisonous moss. We had a dwarf on the team. So when that dwarf got hit by this, with everyone else in the room, by the spores, dwarves are immune to poison. So I specifically spelled out, so dwarves are immune to poison, gnomes are immune to charm effects, and warforged don't breathe or sleep. So we have a warforged and we have a dwarf, and the rest of the team are gnomes. So the warforged is like, hey, I'm not going to get affected by this, right? I don't have to breathe. I'm like, that is correct. You don't have to breathe. And they're like, yes. So they felt smart for remembering what was on their character sheet. And the other one said, wait a second, I'm a dwarf. I can't get poisoned, can I? I'm like, no. It's like, yes. So only 2 people on the team ended up taking damage because the person that triggered Sopa was a gnome, but wasn't affected by it. So only 2 people out of 4 were affected by those spores because their character specifically made them immune to it. So as a DM, I'm looking for circumstances that lean into charm and poisoning effects because I know that sometimes the team is going to be immune to that stuff. So I'll be building out a list of conditions like blindness, paralysis, poison we have, charm we have. If I can get like a quick list of like 6 or 7 different type of conditions that are like complication impacts that can cause damage to the team somehow, then that'll give me a good list of ways to be able to damage the team that I can rotate through and lean into what immunities do they have right now that they can lean on. So the rogue, the espionage character does a face plant, takes the damage from the spores directly by himself. There wasn't anyone else that was affected by this because this was just a personal complication. I didn't have to affect everybody if I didn't want to. The room was already full of spores. I didn't feel like, as a DM, double dipping the team for this minor mistake. He was trying to get out of the effect, leaving the rest of the team behind to deal with it. So I punished them specifically for not trying to create a solution that everyone can benefit from. So that's how I kind of logic that out. And I think as the game continues, I'm going to be able to start parsing out when do I have them roll to see how many people are affected, or when do I affect them alone. So that's a level of separation in mechanics on how I reward or penalize people. But the fun thing out of this was, as a result of them kicking up the spores, and then that guy falling into the spores and taking a face full himself, they all started collecting these bugs that were laying around inside of the spores and peeling them open and then bolting them to their feet. So now they're all wearing these snowshoes made out of the shells of these roaches were like this big. They're shoe size. It's like, they're shoe size. It's like, great. I make a shoe out of them. Like, what? It's like, we think they might be resistant to this somehow. So we all want to strap dead bugs to our feet. So while we're going through the boss, we have less chance of kicking up the dust or kicking up the spores to cause damage to us. And so I'm making a note to myself, reduce the difficulty of this spore against them while they're wearing those shoes, reduce the likelihood of them being penalized for stuff. So that's something that's a variable that's now floating around inside of the game. So what they liked was that we were rotating, and so during the course of the game, we got through we had an hour, right? We had 60 minutes from, hey, how's everyone doing, to thanks everyone for showing up, looking forward to doing this next week. Everyone had a chance to have a rotation of 2. But that was enough time for them to move to understand the problem, investigate the miners that were killed, go into the room where the spores and these bugs are at, find that there's another room, learn some of the situation and complications that are existing in this environment, and decide to move on to the next room in 1 hour. So if this is a 5-room dungeon, they've basically processed 2 rooms. The entryway, the guardian here, was the dead gnomes as evidence that there's trouble, and a giant boulder that the miners put in the way to keep spores from coming out in case they're dangerous. So that was the guardian of the room. And then they went into the first room, which was a puzzle, which was what's going on with these spores and bugs. So they're starting to form some ideas about that. And they find that there's a third room, the next room in, there's a glowing light in there. It's like, well, these bugs kicked off a light, and that's the only source of light that we've seen down here. But you're saying there's a low, through the haze of the pollen, they could see that there's a low red glow in the next chamber, which is leaning down and around a corner. So they didn't have clear eyes. They would have to go in and explore that space to find out where that light was coming from. So we're going to see what next challenge they have. One of the characters had an artifact that they had rolled, which was a Cloak of Pursuit. And so they set a difficulty for themselves of 3, which is a die roll of D10, or a difficulty of 10. And they said, I'm going to use this artifact to allow me to pursue the path that the miners took that got them killed. So he made the die roll. He rolled a 16, so he was successful. So he not only gets to keep the artifact continues to work, and he was successful in his task. So the improvised solution that we came up with was the footsteps that they made through the moss became magically active. They emitted a magical blue light that would indicate where they were. It wasn't a kind of light that would, like it was like a mental ping that they could see the steps that they took through the darkness that were leading down the hill and around the corner. So we know the miners went down there originally, so they probably weren't actually killed in this room. They were probably killed further down because they were looking to see where a platinum deposit might be to go mine, and they got in too deep and they got killed for it. So they know that the real threat is looming around the corner, and that's what they were able to achieve in 1 hour. So the mission, we have a presumption that we'll spend 3 sessions, 3 hours on a dungeon, and then be done with it, extract, and then the 4th session we'll get the results of what we did and advance the guild as a result of it. If they're successful here, they're going to be able to clear the asteroid of the threat so that the miners can mine platinum so they can gain more resources to buy more things for their guild. So that's the reason they want to succeed at this task. If they're successful, they'll be able to get more resources by selling off the platinum ore to get more resources to maybe get more cloaks, or develop some sort of poison or a cure to the poison with the moss that they picked up. One of them actually took an alchemist kit and scraped up a bunch of the spore and put it into a jar to investigate later, because they know they can spend research points to build magic items or salves or weapons out of stuff that they collect as spontaneous magic items, kind of like ciphers, that they can do these die rolls with to create these magical effects that they get to completely improvise as long as they're using the descriptive words that are attached to the item. So they'll have poisonous spores. So if they can convert that into a usable magic item, they'll have the keyword of spores and poison. And they'll be able to do whatever they want with that related to spores and poison, knowing that if they fail their die roll, the spores die and they don't work anymore. If they do work, they get to pull off whatever it is that they wanted. So they liked how quickly they were able to, even though there was a ton of people at the table, everyone was able to roll through things. The mechanics are actually very easy to understand. It only took one rotation of them going through and me hitting them with complications for them to get it. It's like, oh, I get it. So by the time Alexa's turn came back around, Alexa had already recycled all 3 of their facets. And like, wait, I can use anything. I get my effort back. I'm like, yes, you do. And I have all my facets back. And I was like, yeah, because you had to rotate through all 3 of them. It's like, I get it. And they love that because they have no control over what stats they're going to be able to use unless they do. If they have a choice, they can make it. But at some point, they're not going to have a choice. And they're going to get stuck with whatever they want. So it's fast, loose, incredibly narrative. And everyone at the table is improvising. And they're cracking jokes and making fun of each other. And they're sideboarding memes in the chat channel. And it was exactly everything that you would expect to have at a table. But it moved efficiently and quickly. And they were able to process stuff. And the they're explaining who their characters, like every time they're using a different facet of their personality, they're like, yeah, this guy's just dumb as rocks. He's so dumb, he like pushes up his glasses that doesn't have any glass in them. He just pushes up his glasses frames, and he's like, I'll figure this out, and completely botches the roll. And they're all just laughing. It's just normal game shenanigans in a really fast, loose game chassis. The game engine is fast and easy. So I think as a DM, once I get a really good bead on what's a fair way to adjudicate when the team gets hit versus the individual, and I get good at parsing out types of damage that they might or might not be immune to, and being able to learn how to say yes but or yes and statements all the time. If they fail the die roll, yes but, it gets difficult. Like you've just fucked around and found out, versus you did that well and you were able to avoid any trouble with it. It's like, yeah, I'm looking for traps. Well, you found one. You just popped a string, and now you just got shot with a poisonous arrow. Well, I'm a dwarf. I'm immune to that. Hey, good for you. You still take a point of damage because it was a really big dart. That's fair. At least I'm not dead. Yeah, at least not. Or you skillfully did that, and you find a tripwire without actually tripping it. Do you want to disarm it? Yes, I do. Okay, that's going to be a task of disarming this trap, difficulty of 3. So they need to have 3 levels of success to be able to get through that trap. And if they fuck up at any point, they're going to trigger the trap or create an additional complication that they weren't aware of. So it's fast and it's loose, and the narrative just builds on itself because you don't know when they're going to succeed or when they're going to fail. So at best, I just need to have a loose idea of how what the place is, what the creatures are, and what the things in the environment are, and just let the chaos of them trying to mess around in a very Beck Me, BX, Dungeon Crawl Classic, Cypher sort of way. They're just fucking around with the environment. And if it's something that I feel deserves a die roll, then I'll have them make a die roll. And then that begins the cascade of complications that lead them into making decisions and becoming scared of things and strapping bugs to their feet to try to stay safe and running in panic and causing more trouble. It's classic shenanigans, and it worked really, really well. So our next session is next Wednesday. We're going to go into the next room, and they're going to find out what's there, and they're going to fuck around with it and cause some trouble, or maybe find some smart answers to how to resolve this. Maybe even find the platinum mine, the vein of platinum that the previous scout, they had chunks of ore on them when they were found dead. So there's platinum down there. They know it. Now they just have to be able to secure a safe path to get to it, and that's what the team is trying to find out. So that went really well. The whole thing went really well as a first blush with a brand new system that we created literally 28 days ago from scratch. This is working really, really well. So I think in a couple months of game time, I'm going to be able to have a fairly methodical system of being able to parse out the narrative, the damage, and the complications, and see what works and what doesn't, and figure out how to streamline this stuff down so that it's really easy for people to be able to check out and enjoy out here in the real world with the rest of us. So I'll probably make a Kickstarter out of this or something, and then put it out there for folks to play around with. And but we'll make this open for other people to play test before we do that. So that's all I have for the session today. I get to spend some downtime this weekend on the couch with my gal, and just hanging out and having a weekend. And I know that as a man, I'm going to be thinking of D&D. I play D&D. I don't think of the Roman Empire. I think about my D&D campaign. So I know I'm going to be burning some brain cycles on exactly what's in that next room. I already know what's in the next room, but I can't say it because they might be listening. But I will know, I'll be able to figure out what some cool complications and challenges I can put in that room that's going to set them off and just get them just tumbling over each other with these dice to figure out how to play it out. And yeah, so that's it for now. I just want to give you guys an update. I don't think I'm going to need to be able to provide any more updates. Probably maybe I'll make a Friday update log like this, just to have an ongoing blog, a vlog of how the campaign's coming along, just to take a look at it. and just to be able to share my thoughts like this in a short frame. But I think on Monday and Tuesday, I think it's time for me to get back into the Martial Powers Color Land West March campaign that we're building out for the Martial Powers system. So I think on Monday, I'm going to be back here at Lunchtimes developing that some more, those mechanics. So if you think any of this stuff is interesting, be welcome to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notification. I've got a number of different 5e supplements that I've created that are in the link in the description down below. That are all linked up to the DMsGuild. You can check that stuff out. My Patreon About page has a link to my Discord channel. You're welcome to jump in there and hang out if you want. We'll be back tomorrow morning for my Saturday morning workbench. And we'll probably be working on the Spelljammer book because it is very, very close to being finished. So I'm just going to keep working on that in the meantime to get that published. And then we'll be back on Monday. On Sunday, I'll probably release a short video on how to use my Spelljammer mechanics for airships in Eberron. And then on Monday, we'll be back Monday morning. On Monday through Friday in the mornings, we'll be doing more Eberron character and creature token artwork. And then Monday and Thursday night, we'll probably be doing the finishing touches on the Spelljammer book. And I'm expecting that to publish maybe Wednesday. I'm not sure. Soon. I'm right now going to for the rest of the weekend, other than Saturday morning workbench. Whenever I have downtime, I'm going to be working on getting the artwork integrated into the books. So, which we looked at this morning. If you want to go check out my morning Eberron stream from today, I previewed the PDF. The first 12 pages of it look freaking fantastic. So I'm really excited. So thanks a lot, guys. That's it. I'm out of here for now, and I'll see you hopefully in the morning. Cheers.